this full on, let your freak flag fly. Let's celebrate our farts. Let's laugh loud. Let's tell fucking stories. Let's get into the things of life. Sometimes you gotta laugh to keep from crying, god damn it. And let's walk forward in this. And if I'm gonna do that, I have to let love in. I have to be enough for myself.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm feeling very sweet on being back in action with Unbroken Chain after a little over a year's hiatus with Phil Magic Man Cook. I know a lot of you have known and loved Phil's music for a long time, either from Megaphon, his OG band, from his time playing on His Golden Messenger. I've really known him primarily as just a lover, a beautiful human presence, and a very generous collaborator. He's a ball of energy and silliness, and he always just reminds me to friggin' smile and just remember that we always have a choice about the kind of energy that we're putting out in the world. And he has consistently chosen to put out an energy of, I'm going to connect people up. I'm going to remind you of your innate goodness and that you belong here. That's always the vibe I've gotten from Phil is I'm glad you're here. It's good to be here with you. Very present. The track that opened this episode is from an album that he put out last year that he worked on during the pandemic, a solo album of piano music. But another huge project that he has worked on recently is his new record label called Spiritual Helpline. It started as a call-in show while he was stuck at home and has turned into a platform for him to uplift traditional voices from the South, especially gospel artists who, as many of you know, he's a friggin' encyclopedia about gospel music and tradition keepers. I've had the pleasure now of watching twice a documentary called Stay Prayed Up. He produced it and he's also in it. It's about a gospel artist named Lena Mae Perry and her group, the Branchettes, who've been around for decades and decades. And Phil helped her put out a new album of her music recently. And let me just say, I watch, a lot of documentaries, and I'm not afraid of looking at the real shit in the world. I think that's really important, and that documentary actually can be a very sacred way of looking behind that veil. But it's been a long time since I watched a film where I just felt good down deep into my bones when I finished the film. And Stay Prayed Up is exactly that. When you get Lena Mae Perry, first of all, she's just a font of wisdom and light. But you get her and Phil in the same room, and it's almost too bright to look at without, some sun protection. It's really life-affirming, but not in a spiritual bypassy way. Lena Mae Perry's been through a lot in her life, and the way that she's metabolized that and used music to move that energy is incredibly life-affirming. So Phil came down and stayed with Daniel and I in Birmingham earlier this summer. We actually got to go to Muscle Shoals with him. He's working on the Blind Boys of Alabama's new album, Rockin' the Organ, and we got to film a day of them in the studio, which was, talk about life-affirming. Some of the original members from that band are in their 90s now, and they're still bringing it. Just these voices coming out of these guys from deep, deep inside them. So resonant and just incredible to bear witness to people who've really devoted their entire lives to that. So after our day in the studio, we took Phil out to one of our favorite places in the world, in the Talladega National Forest in Alabama. Our friend Dusty lives on 80 magical acres, a place called Parksland. Jumped in the river, we went on a hike. I slept in a hammock, but the boys stayed in a yurt. We had a sauna together. And then when we were sitting around the fire one morning, Phil was like, let's record a podcast. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's do that. So we got to have this really intimate, vulnerable, funny conversation. So come hang out with us in the woods next to the babbling brook, next to the fire. This is Phil and Daniel and I shooting the shit, and I'm really glad you're here, and I'm sending a lot of love to these big, big waves of constant change and grief. And I know a lot of you are doing incredible work in your lives to stay grounded, to take care of the people that you love, and to continue to make meaning as the ground shifts underneath our feet. So I love you. I'm with you. And I'm sending a huge dose of Phil Cook style love and energy into your world. I'm glad you're here with us.
Oh yeah, I was fired up, yo. I got so fired up playing that piano. I get so excited, my hands, my arms start to get tense. When I'm playing, I'm just like so excited. I can tell, I feel my muscles clenching up. I'm like, breathe, Phil, breathe, relax, relax. Because I'm just like, my whole body gets like so excited, and then like I forget to relax and breathe in that thing. But it's all right. Organ is so great. It's because it's such a magnificent instrument.
What gets you fired up? Oh, it's okay. Thank you.
Oh, this is just sage.
It's like passing like a little roach. Where's the clip?
That's what I thought it was.
Where's the clip? You know?
Oh, there we go. What fires me up? Well, I don't have an organ. And it's a dream of mine to own an organ with a Leslie speaker someday. So I can really sit in the room with an instrument that can be that loud that you can feel it, you know, in your bones when you play it. If you're next to the speaker, you can feel everything you're doing in your body. It really shakes you, you know what I mean? Which is like, I mean, there's something special about that. So I've played organ my whole life. And what fires me up is like, when I was in high school, I was really into the meters. When I found the meters from New Orleans, it was just like, oh, here's these 4 dudes that can use space and swing in a way that's just like, it's not precious, it struts, it just has like this incredible confidence to what it is, and it doesn't want to be anything that it's not. I love that so much about that. So I was like, I need to play organ. I'm in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. There's no chance for me to play a Hammond B3, except in the theater, which was just down the hall from the band room. In a corner, there was, covered up with like theater drape, was a Hammond C3, which is the same instrument, but it's in a furniture case. Kind of like when you used to have your grandparents had a TV that was like basically a piece of furniture with wood, and you could put like anything you wanted on the top of it. It weighed probably 500 pounds. This was like this is not going anywhere version of the Hammond B3, right? So I walked in one day and pulled the drape off because I spent every lunch down in the band room, and every study hall I would be in the band room. And by the time I was a senior, I was in the band room all day except for AP English, gym, and that was it. Otherwise, I was in the band room the entire rest of the day. That was where I like modeled my life towards. And my band teacher was still is to this day, just like an enormously influential person for me. I saw this instrument and I walked in and I'm like, yo, is that a Hammond organ? And he was like, yeah, this is a C3. It's been locked. Like the draw has been on it. It's been locked for since I've worked here. It's never been opened. It's just like there. And that was when I was a junior. And then one day I was just like, I'm going to pick that lock. No one knew where the key was. It was locked shut, right? It wasn't sneaking because I would just hang out in the theater and play the piano on the stage alone, you know, like it's all dark out there. And I just decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to learn how to pick this damn lock. So like I sat there and like tried several times to get like something to happen. And the day it popped open was like, it was weeks, but like it popped open and I was like, oh, made that God noise. And then like I rolled the thing up and I was like, oh. And then I was looking up that close at this instrument that I'd been hearing on all these recordings. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. And it hadn't been turned on in 30 years. And so Mr. Greenhall, my band teacher, I'm like, dude, I got it open. He's like, comes in and he's just like, oh, sweet. He's like, do you know how to turn it on? And I'm like, no. And he's like, check it out. You gotta hold this start button up on the left. And while all the tone coils get oiled, you have to like let it run for like, you have to hold your thumb there on this switch for like a minute. And then after it's all warmed up, then you go flip, and you switch the start key and the start flip, and the other one comes down. And then about a minute after that, the sound comes up. You really got to wait. The whole thing's got to warm up because it's all this crazy stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he shows it to me, and then he gives me the layout. And I was so glad that he had that knowledge about how to like work a Hammond B3 as a band teacher. It's pretty rad. You know what I mean? So he showed me how to use it. And then from then on out, every lunch period, I would go in there and I would play on the stage, you know? And so I was like learning how to use the drawbars and do all that. But again, another really private keyboard phase of my life that no one was really a part of. It was just like me alone in an auditorium and as like a 16, 17-year-old kid. And that was like the first thing that like fired me up about like organ, was just like starting to understand how it worked. And then I still to this day, I'm just like so overjoyed when I get to sit down at one and like play one, because I don't own one. So it's special. It's special. I go into a very special place when I play organ. It's different than piano. And it's kind of like I'm a Leslie. If you see me the way I move, like I'm moving right now, it's like I really am all over the place, you know. And you know what? If it doesn't happen, it doesn't. But like I will always be grateful every time I sit down at that instrument. It's such a choir. It's just like all these voices.
So what is sort of the driving feeling that you're having when you sit down at the piano to improvise, I guess?
It starts with breath, and it's walking a tightrope or a balance beam, keeping yourself in tune with yourself. My problem in general, my challenge in general, is when my hands and my brain and my heart are out of alignment. My hands very much tend to get antsy and anxious and kind of move too fast for where I'm actually at, which is like space and swing, what I aspire to, because my days of wanting to be flashy, virtuosic, impressive are way behind me. I just want to play what I hear, and I just want to play what I feel in the moment. So if I'm doing piano right and I align myself, I'm focused enough right now, then my hands fall where they fall. It's sort of like, then it's just like trusting where the next step is coming from, and just trusting myself to just like my fingers know where they want to go. Trust your body, Phil. Trust your body. Breathe into this moment right here, this moment, you know. And while I'm breathing, it's like the next notes like appear in my brain. They appear in my fingers. And if they appear in my brain and they appear in my fingers at the same time, that's when I'm in tune. And if I'm just letting my fingers go where they are, I kind of understand how I'm feeling that day by what's coming out that my body is trusting. This is like monumental for me to like really be understanding this more clearer today than I did last year at this time, maybe. So I got to trust my body, because my body oftentimes is the mirror that I need to just understand. But I have such a hard time getting in tune in daily life and other things. I'm so distractible, you know. And the piano is the thing I have the most practice at, and so my body knows the way forward. So if I just continue to follow that, that's what drives me with the piano. It's just like breath, balance, oneness, you know, and flow. Where it is. And it constantly, I'm like, whoop, I always, whoop, you know, like it always happens. Like it's a long balance beam. It's a 45-minute long balance beam walk sometimes. So it's like there's plenty of moments where I'm like, okay, you know what I mean?
That kind of reminds me of when I'm in a good flow with drawing. Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, what are you drawing?" And I'm like, "I don't know." You know, it's coming out, it's showing me. And then the more that I draw, the more I can kind of be collaborative with it and start to shape it or have ideas about what might work. But a lot of times when I sit down, I don't feel like I don't have a conscious idea of what it's going to be, you know. It's interesting.
Does your body know the rhythms of like, so like for instance, you prefer a Papermate felt tip,
Yep.
black, which is right there on your desk at your house. That's perfectly set at your height so that you can stand, look out the window, and you've got blank paper right there. Yeah, great. So you have lowered your access bar for yourself of just like, I can walk by and just make one mark and keep going. You know what I mean? You can do whatever you want. You can start right away. So when you feel like you're in a flow, or when you start, you're trying to get the balance. What is something that your body tends to do? Can you notice?
That's a really good question. I think what comes to mind is breath also. It just puts me in a very grounded place in my body, where I think a big reason why drawing for me is like an anxiety, like a social anxiety aid, like if I'm in a group setting, or if I feel like people are being very conversational and I don't have a lot of words to give, like being able to focus on putting my energy into my hands and to draw calms all of that down. And then whatever's coming into me, it's like I have space for somebody talking to me. I have space for it. I guess it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like a clearing away of the distractions, which really means like the voices inside me that are distracting, fear voices or anxiety voices. And
Why, for you, what do you notice about it and be important that why is it black felt tip marker for you?
Sharpie's good too. I like Sharpie too. It's just a much thicker line.
Yeah.
But it's just I can use the perfect amount of pressure to get the kind of like really clear line that I want. It rolls onto the paper really nicely, and the line doesn't break the way that like a ballpoint pen would.
Yeah.
And I used to use these micron markers that have a really tiny point, those?
Yep.
Those Japanese ones.
Yep.
And I like those too, but I can't be as loose as I could with a felt tip, because
Yeah.
it just bleeds more. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's good to know your tools, right?
Yes.
Like, I know this pen. I know what it's capable of.
What is we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but what is you were describing my desk and lowering the barriers to entry to the creative process. What does that look like for you?
For me, that just looks like that I can make something legit in 15 minutes. What do I have to do to make something legit within 15 minutes? And so for me, what that is just having my own space that feels really comfortable for me, that I can immediately get there. So I'm surrounded by portraits that remind me of like incredible moments from my life, my journey, my family, the things that affirm me, family heirlooms. That stuff helps me to just remember where I am. And then having the technology and friends who can help me to hook up the technology to have everything hooked up and ready to go. It's already set. All I have to do is literally walk in, and I can basically just hit start, and I can do it anything I want. And so that's been a good exercise too, is to just be like, just make something really quick right now. Just make something really quick. Just how do you learn how to trust yourself with these little experiments and like little things that you put in front of yourself that are like steps instead of leaps, or just looking so far down the line that it just looks overwhelming. Which for people with ADD,
an opera by the end
yes,
of this week.
I got it. Yes, for ADD, it's just like this that I've had my whole life. It's just like these mountains of expectations that can just come out of nowhere, and the drive to really try and do something in the world, like a duty to the world, is a piece, right? And so that's a way for me to just understand this is a step. This is really just a measurable, objective moment. It's 15 minutes. Like 15 minutes, let's do it. So I think that just that practice is really all it requires for just you to get in the rhythm. Easy to do, easy to schedule, easy to be flexible with. Do it every day, and then your body starts to get into the like rhythm of its daily structure of just being like, I'm ready to create right now. I'm ready to go there. And so that's been like something that's great since the pandemic of being home, is that like I'm not in this rhythm of zero, this binary rhythm of away, home, and my routines are just completely wild. It's like I'm home, so I really have an opportunity to practice getting into whatever that is for me, because that's what's important.
And it's driven by you, not by external expectations.
Yeah.
What is your relationship to where does the sort of curatorial, producerial, critic voice step in?
Well, it's a good question, Maura. I feel like we all need to like trust ourselves in general as artists and give ourselves the space to be creative. That is radical self-care. If you're really doing that for yourself, what you're doing is you're saying, I think it was Anthony and the Johnsons. Anthony had this interview, this quote in Spin magazine, and I read it so long ago, but I remember it. So what they said was, take all the voices that are inside your head that are the outside world. So like anything on the critical front, anything on the expectations front, anything that has to do with the outside world that's outside of the space that you're in right that moment. Anything that has to do with that, put it all in a box. However much space you put between that box and you is how much creative license that you are affording yourself and trust that you're giving yourself. And so I think if you give yourself that much runway, what it means is that you put all of that stuff out first, so that the first initial stage is creation, and really let it be creation. Like really let childhood be childhood. And then when it's time to get into the other stages where we finesse, we fix, we think about the outside world. And when the industry gets let in the door in any kind of way, when the crack of the industry gets in the door, that really, really bright fluorescent light of like the industry shines in, and it changes the space. So we have to keep that out as much as we can, because I see that fluorescent light take people down that I know. I want to see them give themselves that runway, but that light is ruining their space. That space, it's not allowing them to put the things out that they should do that for themselves and for the world, you know? And I don't know why I'm so compelled to find that and give that to myself, other than just I've been doing it my whole life. And I just like, it's one thing I really trust and know and I'm good at, and a bunch of unknowns outside of that. I know that I can start there, you know?
Wow, thank you. Yeah, that vision is really clear. That's a gift. Tell me about ADD brain. What does that container mean?
ADD brain. Well, it's funny kind of to be in something for so long that's all you know. But it's also really funny to like begin to gain awareness like around what that is and start to see your patterns, you know? And then when there's something to actually like understand them by, like I got diagnosed at 40. I was 40 years old when I got diagnosed. And my son was diagnosed at the age of 7. It's like, okay, what do you do now? You read about it. Internet is like the worst thing you can do is just like go to Google and just type in like anything. Like, you know what I mean? Anything that has to do with your body and health. It's like, who are you? I don't know you. I have no idea what your angle is. It's not a space that really builds trust in any way. What builds trust is friends, and friends being like Frazee Ford. I love Frazee Ford. She's such a dear friend of mine. And she and I make music together. And she lives in BC, Vancouver. She called me when I told her that I got diagnosed. She said, "Oh, my son has been diagnosed. He's 18. He's found a lot of healing in this book by Gabor Mate called Scattered Minds." And so she said, "You should read that." So I read that book, and the introduction chapter alone, I put down, and I wept for 30 minutes when I read the introduction chapter, because I think I had never had anything that showed me a way that I move in the world in an incongruency that I've always felt but didn't know what to call. And all these moments of just like how I navigate the world and how I experience things, certain sensitivities that I really have, certain things I'm really in tune to. For instance, like being in tune to everything if it's sonic, and I can't tune anything out. And so my experience of being in a crowded place is one where I'm just like, my ears are paying attention to what the chord changes on the radio are, and what the song structure is of the form, always. So I can be talking to you, but after 40 years of being in this brain, I can't turn off that part of my brain. So it has to just go on the back burner and stay, but it's got to stay on the stove. So like that space, along with just being aware of every sound that's always going on and not being able to focus in on one, that's a wild one to just have it be like, that's what people's experiences on ADD, being like, holy shit, yo, like, really? Okay. I felt so seen.
Were those things that had felt like something was wrong previously?
Sometimes, like feeling like kind of on the outside of a situation a lot, like there's sort of a feeling of just being kind of on the outside a little bit, like really obsessive pencil dives into like obsessive pencil dives into like hobbies or something. And my brain would be curious about something and I would pencil dive into it. Like 3 straight weeks of just like whatever it would be, like these little seasons of curiosity. So as a kid, I would just found myself like, you know, my brain was just always active, but I would often come online with someone saying my name for the 4th or 5th time. Phil. By the time they get to the 4th time, they're at that pitch of just like, Phil. That's when I would come back into the zone. But they're talking to me and they experiencing like, pause, Phil, hey, Phil. The pause. They're just like, there's one-sided all of a sudden. I don't have that pause. Something that they just said really sent me on a pencil dive into my brain of just like, it's the way that I'm processing what they're saying in real time. But like, I can only do it by resourcing all my thousands of files of like pitches and tones and like in dialogue from movies and from things people have said to me over my life. It's like this canyon of echoes that is just like ongoing forever. And all of a sudden, you just like tune into one that's like, oh, that reminds me of like Philip Seymour Hoffman's line from Almost Famous. You know what I mean? And just like, I met you, man. You are not cool. I know. Even when I thought I was, I couldn't. The only true currency we have in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool. You know? And you and I talked about that on the way up. I'm like, Cameron Crowe, I feel like that's what he really wanted people to take away from his work. I feel like that was just for me. When I saw that, I was like, that's a truth I'm going to hold up here and know that like that is speaking about vulnerability. So I'm also been just curious about being vulnerable my whole life too. So like that's something that always happens. Always curious about conversation and talking. Obviously. I can go.
Was that supported or encouraged? Was that?
Well, I don't think I was this conversational when I was a kid. Music has just helped to unlock me my whole life and unlock my expression in other ways. And the connection that I have to have in order to make music, the collaboration, just spills right over into just like relationships with people in conversation, you know? I think I was just a drifty kid, but it was really encouraged, of course, just piano in my living room. And I started playing things by ear when I was like 3. You know, Popeye the Sailor Man, Star Wars, whatever. It was just like whatever I was hearing in the house. And my dad played by ear. So like I was encouraged, and I just saw my dad sit down and close his eyes. And kind of my dad does this thing where his mouth is slightly open, his bottom lip kind of protrudes just a little bit. His head's kind of on a little swivel, and he's kind of nodding and shaking his head at the same time in like a figure 8 pattern. And he plays, you know, so I just watched him in that a lot. I can really put myself on the bench next to him. I can put his face in the silhouette of his face with his bottom lip protruding a little bit, like right in my periphery if I'm playing next to him, you know? So like, that's a learned trait right there. It really was just like, well, this is what Dad does. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to sit down at the piano. I'm just going to play. There's no sheet music there. There's nothing there. There's no net. You just sit down and play. Makes you happy. Yeah. So encouraged. Were you?
To make things? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. My mom really, I mean, I think reading was a big part of that. I read so much and I identified so much with authors and storytellers. And then I think acting as a kid just gave me an incredible amount of autonomy. And I felt like it was really, well, it was a professional space where I was interacting with professional adults, and I had to do a good job and show up, and it gave me an incredible sense of selfhood. And it was also a sphere that was separate from what was happening at home, which was really important, I think, to have too. So, yeah, I'm really grateful that that was
Autonomy.
Encouraged.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like having said something you longed for, being taken seriously as a kid around adults. That's something that you like entered that space and you're like, oh, I want you to take me seriously because you took yourself seriously at that point in time.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Like sometimes I can remember, I have memories from like kindergarten where I'm like, I was a fully formed person. I mean, I had really clear feelings about things and what mattered, and Yeah, I try to be really careful of that now when I interact with kids and just give them the benefit of the doubt of like, you know way more than I'll ever understand about you. And I trust that. And I loved authors that took me seriously, that talked about hard stuff and scary stuff and was like, didn't try to pretend that, like, I saw what the world was. You know, I saw that stuff was real in our world. And
Yeah.
so for somebody to pretend to me, to try to protect me was like more harmful maybe than having
you
a
were
real
resistant.
conversation about it.
You had a resistance to that at a young age.
Yeah.
That
I
was a
think so.
clarity.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's like inherent wisdom in a really cool way. You know, I think that's cool that you had that piece of just like, no, give it to me straight. Like, I want to know. So, but for you, it was with books.
I think so.
Showed you the world, and that's a safe space to like go straight into that as a kid while you're in your bedroom and just got the nightlight on. You're in a safe space while you explore these really real regions of like your inner world.
Yeah.
You know, so
What
I
did
like
that for
picturing
you?
that. Well, like, I mean, I love that. Like, Maurice Sendak doesn't protect kids.
Yes.
He does. It's really very much like these are some real things, and there's just like there's a rawness to Maurice Sendak that's like just awesome. Like, and it reads kind of like a little bit of an obtuseness sometimes as an adult when you're like looking at those things. Like, why would he put? Oh, it seems like a little bit. Something's a little jarring all of a sudden. Like in the night kitchen. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like some like really necessary nudity in that book. As a kid, that was just like really necessary for me to see. Like, there's a part of the naughtiness too, of like him getting into naughtiness, nudiness, and like in the kitchen where you're not supposed to go and this shit, but like how much fun it is to like sneak in there and be like, this is where all the stuff is. There's knives in here. You know, and like that kind of shit, you know. And I wouldn't be surprised if that directly correlated with like being like into that. At the same time, we were into like Robin Hood, sword fights, knives in the kitchen. Oh gosh, mom and dad looking so weird. They took steak knives up to my brother's room, and we really quietly like had like sword fights with like steak knives. You know, danger was in the kitchen. And I love it that it's like he really balances both of those worlds. Maurice Sendak. Hatchet by Gary Paulson. Dropped that. That book is the first book I read immediately after finishing it. I read it again. Like, I stayed up really late. I couldn't like believe what was happening, you know, to like the kid and his experience of being alone in the middle of the wilderness. Have you read this book? Hatchet by Gary Paulson. Have you read it?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I reread it last year because I'm going to read a lot of my kids. But yeah, that kind of book, that sense of danger of just like, and he gets attacked by a moose at one point that like, you know, charges him, and he's just like, got to find a way to make fire. He has to like, the plane that crashed, the pilot had a heart attack and the plane crashed in this lake. Like, he has to go retrieve the bag, and he has to go dive under to get it at some point. He has to do it. There's all these situations that as like a 10-year-old, I was just like, my heart was pounding when I was reading this book. You know what I mean? So it's really being alive in your body when it's there. And I think in movie-wise, Goonies is a good first example, too, of just like, those kids are in real danger of being killed by the Fratellis the entire time. Like, they're actually trying to kill these kids. You know what I mean? That's like a real baseline raw underfact of Goonies, you know? Like, so I appreciate it, because you can experience these things as a kid from like the safety of your cushy couch or bed.
Yeah.
And then go to bed.
Go to places that you've never seen too. Like I mean, even just for example, like the Goonies, I didn't know about the Pacific Northwest. You know, growing up in the Deep South, like I didn't know about, you know, mountains on the ocean. And that soundtrack, like I still hear music to this day that can send me back to like that Goonies sort of like mystical, magical.
Cyndi Lauper.
And I just remember being a kid and being like, it is magic.
Yeah.
This is magic. And that landscape out there is magic, and I'm going to go there one day. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I want to go walk on that beach where they are, because I bet there's a pirate ship out there. You know?
The pirate ship,
man. You know, I bet
craggy rocks into an ocean and all of that mystery out there. Riding bikes. That movie made you want to ride bikes?
Yeah, I think I might have already been riding bikes with friends, and it was almost this like affirmation.
Yeah, it was like,
yeah, we're cool, man.
Yeah, we're cool, man.
Yeah, we're cool.
riding bikes.
Even though it's just like 6 of us that like ride around this little neighborhood, and we had like forts in the woods that we would make. You're like, oh yeah, this is just like a part of a long lineage of like creating magic, creating your own story.
Oh yeah, totally.
What is it like as a parent to think about how to guide your kids into the world that we do live in?
That's an absolutely incredible question, my friend. I don't know. It's like a daily it's a daily kind of assessment, I think, of just like seeing where they're at, seeing where I'm at, find the common ground between those things, start there, and then see what happens as the day unfolds, as it arises. I think that there's just moments that happen in every single day, whether you're in the real world with your kids, and those are teachable moments when they're witnessing things with their own eyes, they're hearing things with their own ears, and they're having their own feelings while they're in and seeing something. Those are moments to just like give some context, give just a space for questions and curiosity about something. I think I've fought for a long time here and there. It's just like you just start to understand, after 10 years of being a parent now, trial by fire, trial and error, a lot of that. But it used to be like, well, what am I going to teach them today? Oh man, I really got to teach them about this. Why haven't I taught them about this yet? Why haven't I taught them about this yet? There's a lot of whirlwinds of things that are like, the world is so wide. You want to give them the world, but to kids, you are their whole world. So really, to give the kids the world, you just got to give them yourself completely, right? That's what am on the path of. That is my path forward. That's what's clear to me now.
Wow, that's beautifully said.
We all need it. That was another piece in Gabor Mate's book. He speaks about kids that are born with a genetic sensitivity combined with an environmental set of circumstances that are likely to make the symptoms of it or to like exacerbate it. And one of the main ones is whoever your main relationship is. And so let's just say it's with our mother, like with our moms, that there's a distractibility in some way where there's kind of like not a full focus, not an unbroken like connection, really prolonged eye contact, really undivided attention and focus. When those things are kind of broken for various reasons, and if you think about the rise of ADD right now, and you think about how many parents are sitting there with their kid and then they have their phone right here, that kind of distraction in modern times, maybe for my mom was that I was 5 months old and she was pregnant with my brother. However that unfolds, and she has ADD. My mom has ADD. So that's also a network that can kind of create a little bit of like interference. But the symptoms go up a little bit with that. And so later in life, if my main relationship was with my partner and that same thing is happening, it can really kind of make it exacerbate the hard parts about it,
So you're working on providing that for them, that constant
Absolutely.
Connection.
That book changed. I changed the way I spoke to Ellis immediately. Like while I was reading that book, I was like giving real time instruction about just like unbroken. Like this is what he needs. If he's going to build the confidence of the autonomy that you and I both found in our instruments, that I know that you have found at points in your life, in your childhood, I'm assuming too.
Yeah, I mean, I need to read this book.
I highly recommend it.
I need to read it. I mean, you definitely got me going down my ADD path, like being diagnosed like really young. Like not being sure of who I am and like how I'm moving through the world seems very different, but not feeling allowed to talk about that openly and be given the space to like really navigate it. I think that created a lot of harm in me going forward because I started to like bury parts of myself inside of that place in me that was like, oh wait, something's wrong with me all the time. Something's wrong because I'm not showing up to this situation the way everyone around me wants me to. I feel this like deep desire in me, as you're talking about with your kids, like with the kids that I interact with, just give them the space. ask them questions. I feel like I wasn't asked a lot of questions growing up, about where I was in the moment and what I needed and what felt good. And
Swing that pendulum, brother. Yeah.
swinging. Yeah. I still have to remember, even you talking about, being diagnosed at this age, I'm like, oh yeah. I still give myself such a hard time about how I interact with the world, that maybe something's wrong with me.
Well, it makes me want to read the book too, because just hearing you talk about the difference in your experience of interfacing with somebody and their experience, like I definitely recognize myself in that, and I know I could be providing a lot more like patience and kindness and perspective in those moments where I'm like, I'm trying to connect. Why aren't you with me? And like he's in one of those archives apparently. You know?
But he's like, what's funny is that like it's the way I'm processing being in front of you right in that moment. Like I'm with you, and I'm actually like really internalizing it in what you're saying in a way, because it's making a connection to something and pulling it back up. So even if it means that I'm like temporarily like offline, like there's still information coming in, but it's me sort of like, it's my brain operating at the speed that it needs to be operating at, and then it needs to kind of just do some retrieval and bring it back up into my own vibration, which is its own pace, But that means I'm still meeting you when I tune back in. It's not like I was thinking, oh shit, I left the oven on. I'm visualizing what you're telling me. You're telling me about your day and in your morning, and you're just like, oh, I went to Miami, and then I'm like, Miami, and then I have to go to Miami in my head. I drove down spontaneously with my buddy, and I think about driving down spontaneously with your buddy, and like the wind in the car, the windows kind of open, your hair blowing, like sunglasses on, you're laughing. I'm putting myself in this space, but it means that I'm going into this place where I'm really trying to be with you in my mind, but my mind has a certain pace that might be not completely as fast as what the words that are coming out of your mouth at, but I'm still participating with you fully to my own capacity in that moment. So I think that's an important truth for myself, to just know that like I get so down on myself for being what I would self-prescribe as being like, I'm a space cadet, disconnection, escape, being completely on the outside, space cadet, on the outside. I put myself out there when I say that about myself, right? Mm-hmm. I put myself out on the end of it. It's like, it's not the truth. The truth is that I'm here with you. I mean, yes, of course there's times when I'm like, shit, I left the oven on. Of course.
Oh, everybody. I do that too.
Everybody leaves the oven on, and everybody worries if they left the oven on, and everybody comes back and is relieved when they realize they haven't left the oven on.
It's never on.
It's never on. We gotta trust our bodies.
So what can I do to be a better partner instead of like reflecting back that one of y'all would be in space? Like, how can I honor that you're with me? You're just on a different wave or pattern.
Something for me that helps me. You and I are friends. You and I hug when we see each other. We're hugging friends. One of the things for me is just like, that helps a lot. If we're talking and we're standing close enough for you to just like touch me on the shoulder while you're talking to me, or sometimes just like tap your hand on the back of my hand, just like that really kind of just, it guides it back in a way that doesn't kick me out of being like, oh God, it's like, no, that's what remains it unbroken. For me is just that touch. It's a continued connection, and it's one layer deeper of being present with you, is that we are like touching hands while we're talking, or something as simple as that. It increases the amount of connection that's happening in a moment. So that helps me.
Thank you. Okay. Do you think that would help you?
Yeah, I think so. There's similarities, but we're also like, I think there's so many different like places on the spectrum of ADD, and like what that means for each person, or whatever it is we've come up with ADD, but it means so many things. I was thinking about this example of maybe being like 13 or 14 would be like, I could be in like a class that I really liked. Like it could be like a history class, or like one of my English lit classes where there's just a lot of beautiful storytelling that I would be really interested in, and a teacher could be up, at the board, like talking about something, reading something, and I'm watching them pace back and forth. Like I'm in there. I see what's being written on the board. I hear the words that are coming out. But as you said, Phil, it's like 1 or 2 words that I would hear could trigger a memory in my brain. And all of a sudden, I go into a movie in my head about that memory.
Yeah.
Some people might call that like daydreaming. But daydreaming in school is such a bad word. It's like, don't do that. You know, like, what are you doing? Like, be here, be present. And it's like, what? I am. I am. You brought up something in my world that's actually really important to me. And I've just gone deep inside of me.
Neurons are firing.
Yeah, I'm thinking about all these things that are so meaningful to me. And then all of a sudden what happens is the teacher looks at me and says, Daniel, what do you think about that? And all of a sudden I zoom back into that moment and I see everyone around me like staring at me, and I see my teacher staring at me and giving me about 5 seconds before they get upset that I have nothing to say. They're just looking at me, and I'm thinking like, okay, well, what should I say right now?
I'm in Australia, actually.
Yeah. Or like I said, problem solving. Like, oh yeah. Oh, cool. That's what you just said really makes sense to me. Let me see how I can apply that to my inner world.
Yeah.
But now you want me to come into the exterior world, and then it's like, aren't you listening? Why are you not listening? Or like I felt like I would retreat. Like I would retreat to this like very like scared place of like, oh shit, I'm dumb. It could even be like a question where like after class the teacher comes up to me and saying like, did you take your medication today? Like, how are you doing with that? Instead of like, well, who are you? What's going on? What's going on in there? Because I don't see you as a bad person. I don't see you as someone who doesn't want to get this stuff. If I can't show up in the way that you need me to show up, I just wish that everyone could trust that like I'm still here and I'm still working through stuff in my body. And some teachers actually gave me that space. I do feel like I had some, and those were the ones that you remember.
Those are the ones you remember. There's teachers, and then there's teachers. There's doctors, and then there's doctors. You know, there's friends, and then there's like friends. I think all of it is like a presence, you know what I mean? It's like being there in that moment, and it's a collaboration. And all those things is a collaboration, you know?
It sounds like, has this last year been a particularly reflective or transformative time?
Yeah. I would say that book was really a catalyst in a lot of ways. I think that I found that book to be so healing because it really is taken in by somebody who had struggles with it themselves, has kids that struggle with it themselves, and you know, can speak from personal experience, and then interviewed so many people from so many different walks of life, from so many different like cultural dialects of like what their life's experience have been, what it's like to live with somebody who has ADD, what it's like to be someone with ADD and live with someone with that doesn't have it, and then, you know, what it's like to have kids that have it, what it's like to have a parent that has it. Every angle of a family, or however it is covered in an experiential piece. So I just felt like the amount of size of just like, that makes so much sense right now. Holy shit. It's just all a door that I got started walking on. So I think from there on too, it's just like as what it feels like my industry is coming back online. My career is kind of like got more things plugged into it down the pipeline right now, where I can tell that there's like firing up the engine a little bit again. And all my friends have full tours scheduled. They have full schedules back on finally after 2 years, you know. So it's like getting ready to go back out in the real world in a way that feels more just like, what have we learned on this time out from Mother Nature? You know what I mean? You sit down and you think about what you've done. Think about it for yourself. I want you, hey, you two, go in the corner and sort out what go in the corner and sort out this beef you got. Okay, great. All right. All of it. Everybody, sort out your shit if you care to. Here's a chance. So, enormously reflective 3 years for real. Y'all too, I know.
Reflective times? Yeah. I think for me, a lot of it was being in a fairly new relationship and then being home. We were pretty much home together and we were working on a big project together. And it was just like, I think I've been a pretty independent person a lot of my life. And so And I think I had a lot of fear, if I'm honest with myself, about like deeply investing in another person because I can't control another person. And so there's obviously just like a big trust fall there that I hadn't really committed to in my life before. So I did a lot of learning about partnership and about myself, you know, in partnership.
Both. Yeah. And you really like jumped into the water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
You know. Ta 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 ta. Switch the cane here. Okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Could have used one more rehearsal before we got on stage to do this duo dancing act.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rehearsal. Yeah. When there's no time for rehearsal.
No
that's
time
just
for
here you
rehearsal.
go.
You get on that
Doing it
stage.
live.
Curtain is lifted.
Yeah.
Lights are on.
You better pay attention to each other because Maura's stepping left. You gotta step on her toes, yo.
But
She's
hey,
been
when
dancing on a stage by herself for such a long time.
but when you do step on each other's toes, like give each other a little grace for that, you know.
Yeah.
Like, give each other the grace.
Give each other the grace.
Like we're gonna
You're
figure
out.
this
You're
out.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't musical chairs. There's one chair. There's only one chair. Ready? Run.
It seems like you have that with your brother a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a lot of different channels that you're deeply connecting on.
Yeah, I mean, with like when there's only two siblings, then that sphere of the siblingry is like almost like look at it like a washing machine. Like we just threw all of our laundry into that, and being so close in age, and then growing up next to each other, growing into the same career, being in a van, being on stage, being in the studio, being in everything together. It just spun us out to the outsides of the thing. Like my, you know, where it's like all of my gaps are things that Brad is strong at. All of Brad's gaps are things that I'm strong at.
Wow.
And that is how we've developed. It's been centripetal force, like the Doppler effect or something. So I really look at it that way. Like it was just that much energy between the two of us in our household that we really formed each other into each other's like negative spaces. So I really, when I see Brad and I see like a complete unit that if it's operating functionally, ideally, efficiently, curiously, there's nothing we can't do because we have all the skills between the two of us to take care of each other and our people in a way that honors all of it. So that's how I feel about Brad. It's like he completes me and I complete him. You know?
What a gift.
It is. I mean, you know, it's a good gift. You're grateful for that gift. Sometimes the gift is like the thing that you have to take home now. Someone gives you.
Is there trust there that you can be like, we need a break for a little bit and then come back here?
And we've given that to each other on multiple occasions. You know, in multiple occasions it's been just like long history. You know, we had to sort out our shit. We just did. We had to sort out how we argue because when we first hit the road in like 2007, it was like that proximity and always living together, never not living together pretty much. Like we just had all these like bad habits that we had built up from just like, we were just in our 20s. We were far away from our family in North Carolina. And so we had to sort out our shit. And it was messy for a while because we were in strenuous circumstances, you know, like being in Europe for the first time on Amsterdam and Thanksgiving and getting way too lifted before we had to like, you know, do whatever. And then getting in a really heated like fight on this like in Amsterdam, like really heated, like outside, like on the street of this place, and just knowing these moments that have been really difficult, like really strenuous moments where we were just under enormous pressure. We had to really show up for these things, and so it was like, do you got this? Do you got this? Do you got this? I don't think I got it. You know what I mean? Like a really intense shit, you know. But time moves on, and it's like, after a certain point in time, it's like, I don't want to go through that rigmarole of all the things that we can do that dance if we want to. We got to get back in there. So we don't actually have time right now. If we are not right now, we need to go outside, get right, and get back into the zone. You know what I mean? Because we know we're trying to protect this zone. So I think that it is like a real commitment to each other. That's what I realize. It's just like, we're in this for the long haul. We're stuck with each other for the long haul. If we're strong, our family is strong. If Brad and I are strong, it's especially if the siblings are strong. That's the real beauty about being a parent to multiple kids. Is like you see their relationship develop, and you realize that at some point they're going to have all they'll have is each other at some point. Hopefully. So I think our commitment to that has helped us to navigate all kinds of things. And so I really trust where we go now, because it's not that we don't get into the shit. It's not that it doesn't happen anymore. There aren't things to talk about and get upset about. It's just that we've committed to just like moving forward in a way that just honors and respects each other. Mm-hmm. And lots of hugs and committing to not just working together. And that's it. That's the only time I see him. As we did that was 2020 into 21. We just only work. It was like we only saw each other's sessions. Brad's producing, I'm on a thing. So we have to sort out these things and just be like, yo, we need to just hang out. We're seeing each other in sessions a lot, but we gotta let's get out of town. Let's go to lunches. Let's hang. Let's just have brother hangs so we balance out the work and how much we're just give each other space.
Utrecht, baby.
Utrecht. We're going. We're going. That's a sacred place for us, for both Brad and I. We have so many friends over time there. That's just like, it's family. It's like we show up. It's just like having so many, it's like a whole community of like, how do we know this many people in this one weird, obscure, like mid-sized, Dutch city? I don't know. But just the cosmos, that's like a sister city. Mm-hmm. We show up and our shoulders drop. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's everywhere you go, though, man. I mean, I think because I've seen you all around this side of the world. I've never been over to like Europe with you, but I mean, I've been with you all over this land on this side, and it's like everywhere you go, it's like family. Like people see you, and you see them, and it's like clear to me that you've known each other your whole life, and then it might be like, oh yeah, we've only known each other for 2 years. And it's like, what? Like people are so tuned in to the energy that you put out that it's like I just watch people light up when you walk in the room.
My face hurts after we hang out because I'm smiling so much.
They're so joyful, and that's before you even started playing an instrument. I mean, shit, once the instrument... But you are playing instrument, like your heart, your smile, the energy that you project is like such an instrument of
playing
love.
My heart.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks,
and
Daniel.
And that vibration, like you put it out there for people to like hop on, to that wavelength.
Yeah.
I'm on this wave.
Thank you. I mean... It's so good to fall into the space of the two of you, It's so good to just like go to some place where you can just kind of fall into the vibe, just be in there. Yeah, and I guess I've just like developed like a curiosity about just culture and just community and collaboration, and I'm compelled by it. I mean, my favorite aspect of music is harmony, how notes connect to each other. That's my favorite aspect of music, always. Anything that has to do with harmony. Just like it's like my brain is a harmony brain, harmony, and different ways that harmony and things can have relationship to each other. So I've just such a relational mind that I'm always trying to connect the dots between every single thing that I have in my life. I'm building my own like neural network of this, but it's like this book in a big way. My reflection has made me realize that this is what I do, so I can acknowledge it and I can own it and be like, this brain is a safe space for me. Because I want it to be a safe space for me to be able to be like, your brain is magical, bro, in your own way. So whatever way that our brains are what we have magic in ourselves is like, so I think once you're in tune with it and you look for it in other people, and we talk about the spark, we talk about inspiration a lot, we're all very influenced by the company that we keep. And that trust that comes with fostering those relationships and continuing to grow in them and continuing to like build the space, the domain in which like that exists, And there's so much of an opportunity there when you see it and you feel it. And we know this from music. You're such a music dude. You've been playing great shit by this whole weekend, by the way. I really appreciate you playing things that are really new to me.
It's fun.
My reflective space has been one of like revisiting a lot of things right now. So getting something new this weekend was really nice. Just, that experience was really great. It was like, oh, there's still so much great music being made every day. And when you're in a room with it and you feel it line up on stage, you feel everything click, and then you feel the audience feel it, and then you feel like, oh shit, this is like music showing us in its own language that it's possible to connect in this oneness, even if it's just for this moment. That's like why I do this. There's just like a click, a flow. It's like a boom. And that moment is beauty. It's like a gesture, you know? And so I think that why it's so important to me, why people fill me up, and why I've realized that, like, although there's times when like I get really exhausted spiritually a little bit, I think if I honor my friendships the way that I really want to, and know that I have a great capacity, and just trust that I have enough capacity to nurture relationships that I have, as many as I have, with gratitude, knowing that everything just kind of keeps growing at its own pace. I think just trusting in that is good. And when we are kids, like, you really look at your parents, like you said, your parents are your whole world, right? So you're getting all of this sub information from them. You're getting all of this nuanced, subliminal, contextual information for the world from your parents. Whether they're deciding to show it to you or not, your focus is on them, and so you're taking everything in that they're reacting to the world with, and you're noting all this stuff, right? Mm. So this is how our parents are real people as we get older, because we realize they're just navigating the same terrestrial plane we are. And some things are really uncomfortable for them. Some things they are not wired for. Some things they didn't handle really well, and they just didn't have the tools to do it, right? But there are things that they do handle well, in ways that they do lean in. And just to know that they're humans as we grow up is big. But for me, being in a grocery store with my mom when I was a kid is like my archetypal memory of my childhood. And having somebody who I didn't know, a stranger to me, run, exclaiming my mother's name, and rapidly approach her and embrace her as tight as she could, with as much fervor and love as she could muster in that moment. A purely gratuitous bear hug. Tears in her eyes, saying, "You helped my family so much. You helped my nephew. You helped my sister with her kid," because she was a social worker for 40 years for the county of Chippewa Falls, town of 10,000 people. Her career was that if anybody was born with this extraordinary or special health care needs, anything from being born with half a brain, spina bifida, to Down syndrome, to like different things, all these families are all of a sudden have a path to walk that is going to involve a lot of services. It's going to involve a lot of care. It's going to involve a lot of Social Security, Medicare, like whole systems of care and coordination that they're going to have to now navigate and understand how to run these equipments that, and these technology that keeps their kid alive sometimes. Working with kids who are going to live for maybe 2 years, 3 years. Maybe they say 2 or 3 years and they live for 14 somehow. And my mom, being a person who is with those families and gives them a roadmap of, these are all the people that you're going to need to talk to. We're going to meet with them. We're going to meet with them together. I am going to be your constant in all of these situations so that you understand. So my mom, lifeline, put people's hands into the hands of the services they need and gave them a roadmap to walk forward with their new reality. This is what my mom did every single week of her life. Showed up on Monday morning. And more than 10 times in my life, I went to a funeral with my mom on a Saturday or a Sunday for a kid that she worked with and knew from birth until when they passed. Got to know their families, got to know everybody. She was in living rooms with people. And then she'd show up on Monday morning and meet another new family. And she showed me that the heart is the strongest of our muscles. Oh, it's the strongest. In every way. It's a prism of light. It reflects, it refracts every single which way. You know, what keeps it raw is what buffs out all the smudges that build up over time when you have these failures and these expectations that are unmet that we like just punish ourselves for. We get in our own way. We hurt, we scar. But like that rawness, that vulnerability, and that just like ability to just to know that like the connection outweighs in the long run, like the connection just like outweighs the things that could go wrong, the things that could happen. Like the journey itself is going to contain heartache. It's going to be hard. I'm going to have to go through this. Knowing and meeting this family right now, I'm going to see this family navigate all this, including their kid living for like 6 years. And I'm going to be there the whole time. And I'm leaning in that way. And like that strength to me is a strength that I'm just like, lift as much weight as you want. Play as many notes as you want. Do you want to know what real strength is? That shit. That shit is strength. In a way that I know that most human beings don't have, are not born with the capacity or tools to really understand that level of compassion and resiliency that comes with that. It's awesome. She's like the glue of so many of the networks of her life. She's really the glue, you know.
I love what you're saying, that the wages of any pain that might come from being vulnerable are worth it. It's worth it. And I think that's my understanding of what any sort of wisdom teacher like Jesus has been saying, is like helping us see that the point is not to avoid all of that stuff, that you can't have one without the other. And that's what the human realm is really about. That's what we're here to do, is to like learn through those portals of like loving deeply means that we live in a dimension where things die and everything is constantly changing. And to love things means to learn how to walk with the things that you love constantly changing and going to disappear one day. And it's really powerful to see that you can live deeply in both of those things being true.
It's true.
I really love what you said earlier when you were talking about your relationship with Brad, about protecting the zone.
Yeah.
I think that's such a cool way to approach really any relationship, because it's so like the mutual space of the relationship, the zone, is bigger than either person, and it's bigger than any of the like personality stuff that's attached to like a specific human. And I feel like thinking about it that way calls me into like the integrity of like devotion or service to this shared thing that's beyond like my own ego or the other person's ego. And I really appreciate that framing. That's really helpful.
Yeah, how do we do that? How do we just keep doing that? Because I don't have that with everybody, you know what I mean? In that sense, I mean, I believe in it because of that with Brad. I know it's possible. It resonates. It's like something we like and want to have. Because it's clear that you can, as soon as you have that commitment to the zone, and within our context, like oftentimes it's just like music and family, like where it's the commitment of the song is higher than that. We got to protect the zone around this song, the zone around our own egos in a situation, and just like allow for the others to emerge, you know? And so it helps it to just not be hooked by the things that'll pull you out of that into a dance that you just know so well, like this well-worn trench. You're like, let's walk around this trench so we can, you know what I mean? Like, whatever those things are, you know? It's cool to recognize that, you know, at some point in time when you just see it, or that you have an opportunity for it in your life, or that maybe you've been doing it your whole life in some way and haven't really realized that you've been doing it. Yeah. Those are the most fun things, right? You're like, I kind of actually been doing this kind of for a long time. I didn't realize I was doing it though. It's like, my body knows the way, you know?
Tell me about that.
My body knows the way.
Body knows the way.
To the bathroom. My body knows the way, yeah.
I'm gonna get there just in time.
I'm gonna make it if I try.
Yes, I will.
There is no try, there's only do.
I'm gonna do it.
What are you gonna do?
Just in time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always the right time.
Oh yeah.
You sound like the cotton commercial guy now.
Oh yeah.
There's only one cotton commercial. Here. I don't know much.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's talk about what we say. What'd you say, Maura?
Oh, about your body knowing the way.
All right. Talk about our body knowing the way. Okay. I'll talk about my dad. And watching my dad will let his body lead the way. Okay. As a way of what I witnessed. Okay. Every year in this northern Wisconsin place that I grew up with, and we dealt with a lot of snow, you get a hobby or you get a habit in the winter. That's basically, hopefully, just everyone gets a hobby because you're inside a lot. Or if you're outside, you fucking choose to be outside. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm going to be cold. I'm going to be outside. I'm going to do some outside shit. I live here. For us, that was downhill skiing. That's culturally in my family what we would do. And my dad raised us on ski hills. And he was a ski patroller. Because he was a nurse by trade, it was a really lateral move to just like get certified in ski patrolling, and then he could get his lift tickets for free because we skied all the time. So every winter we would go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where there were all these really, really great ski hills, like the best you can do in the Midwest before you get to mountains is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And we would have like that first week of January, my dad and my brother and I would take a whole week in the UP. This is really where I witnessed my dad in his most physical element, in his body the most, was in this week when we would be on a ski hill. So Aaron Neville ties into this because my dad would take the day off of work before we would leave, and he would make a ski tape. Ski tape 92, made for that winter, for that January, first week of January 1992, ski tape 92. He would make it from vinyl.
I love him.
To cassette, and it would be like Try a Little Tenderness by Otis Redding would be on there, like the Moody Blues Tuesday Afternoon would be on there, like Aaron Neville Everybody Plays the Fool would be on there, the Neville Brothers Yellow Moon would be on there, that Daniel Lanois record, Ricky Lee Jones would be on there, there would be like Van Morrison would be on there, the band would be on there. He would just really make this whole tape, and then we would listen to it in the van all 4 hours going up, so just multiple times cycling. Then we would get to the ski hill, and we would get to the A-frame we stayed in for the week, and you have all your stuff, you're at the bottom of the ski hill, and my dad had a Walkman for cassettes that he would put into his jacket, and he always would have this wild hat. He would make a hat every year. Some years, one year he had one that had a spatula with a plastic burger on it. One year he had one with a nest and 2 cardinals in it and a little egg on top of it. One year he had like this like mohawk. He would just be this character who would show up, and he would just wear some kind of outlandish shit, and he would put in his headphones, like his earbuds, and he would listen to this ski tape that had all of the moments of his life where his body was in flow. He's such a music fan. And then he would hit the ski hill, and he wouldn't bomb the hill like my brother and I, just looking for jumps. Just looking for visceral, raw experience. Where are the jumps? Yeah, we're already at the bottom. My dad took his time, and he would use the whole ski hill. He would fly all the way to the one side of the trail, all the way to the other. And he would find a way to use all 4 of his edges. If you ski, if you're going to turn left, you push in with your inside right ski edge, and that'll turn you this way, and you lean off on your left foot. If you're going to turn right, you lean on your left edge here, right? My dad had balance enough so that he could turn left with his left ski in the uphill side, which is a totally different balance. You're putting your balance uphill when you do that. It's really uncommon. But he could use that, and if he did that, he could kick his leg all the way around like this. And then he'd go to the other side of the road, and he would use his uphill inside edge. So I tried it. I fell every time I tried. It was incredible balance. And he'd be in there, and he would duck down into it, and he would come up. Brad and I would sit at the bottom of the chairlift, and we would just be like, at the bottom, and we would just like look up. There he is. Some dot, you just see him, because I could see the shape of my dad in his flow, using all of his edges, Aaron Neville in his ears, and the Neville brothers, dancing on the ski hill. So graceful, just completely in the flow, and just knowing where to go and how to do it. In his most happy place. It's like when I think about my dad and those ski tapes, I'm just like, That is like what I realize being in that kind of space is, what he's given himself and then let us witness him doing. So that's the benchmark of how I like measure it for me too. You know, it really is.
It's like pleasure is good. Doing
Yeah.
things that feel good in our bodies is good. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful.
You put a quarter in me today, yo. Just put a quarter in me. Put an eighth in me.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a really good. Segue as I pick this joint up.
I told you, watch out for that laugh. I did.
It's good.
Phil, do a laugh test on the microphone real quick for me.
Could we talk a little bit about? Could you talk a little bit about your journey with plant medicine?
Yeah. Well, I think probably starts with aloe vera.
Ooh.
Starts with an aloe plant. And having one and breaking it off when we'd go camping, or I'd burn myself somehow or have something. I remember that. And then oozing it, pushing it, it oozes out and it smells really kind of like vaguely hospital-y, vaguely something. You know what I mean? There's something like that's just in there, and just being like, it's so goopy, but being like trusting it. You know? Being like, okay, this is going to help. I can tell this feels weird, so it's going to help. You know what I mean?
For
Good
like
place.
sunburn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunburn. That's exactly it. Like that. Having that. So that's a good place to start. That it started around there. Being in there. Plant medicine being also like picking snap peas with my grandma in her garden, and her putting one right in my mouth, and just that burst of like just fresh snap, sweet crunch, all of that. That's medicine. It's still medicine to have a fresh snap pea right now, because it's like grandma. Right?
Yeah.
So I think the best things like really put me into a space where I just like feel taken care of, I feel seen, I feel open. And when plants ease and aid in that, it's good. And it's good when it's hard, but only experience has taught me that it can be, that the hard is necessary. You know what I mean? Only by going through it several times, coming out the other side and just realizing like the longer reflection of those ones, that longer node that happens underneath kind of the surface of the ocean when the difficult things arise, and just knowing that this is needed, this is so needed. And then being able to get to a space where I trust it more, so it doesn't have to be so background. Because I think hard experiences, wherever they are and however they come up, are going to happen. Just like we were saying, you're on this path, toe's going to hit a couple rocks, you are going to dribble a little bit of pee on your pants when you go off the side of the trail there into the bush. It's going to happen. You're just going to walk it off.
Well, that's what's going on with y'all. You're walking it off.
Walking it off.
Shaking it off.
Shaking it off, man. So yeah, I had a really hard trip when I was 21, and it was one where I really set myself up for failure in every way. When I look back on it now, it's so clear. It's so clear, like how exactly I did it, and it's a really, it's a really famous story within my childhood friend group. Like the day, like Phil's big day. Like Phil had a big day. And, in retrospect, I didn't have the people around me. I was alone, which is a big task to do. But when you're 21, you're just like, yeah, because my first time was totally amazing. So my second time is also going to be amazing.
Is this mushrooms?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is psilocybin. And so my first time was amazing. My second time was like excruciating, But it was okay in the end, which is what's great. But it was only okay when I got someone next to me who I loved and who showed up and was like, all right, I'm coming over. Oh, okay. Boom. And like 10 minutes later, he's holding my hand and we're walking around the grounds like a Alzheimer's patient outside of like a care facility, just slow, just supported, both hands on my body, just slow walk. And eventually walked me to a good place, enough where I felt like I could drive to work at 3 p.m. where I was bartender and had to clean things with bleach. And then I had to like put a bunch of goldfish into bowls. This is at 3 p.m. in a morning where I took mushrooms at like 7 a.m. Was like, okay, I'll do it now. And yeah, and that ended up being like just like a really raw day. You know what I mean? That end of that night I went to bed and I was just like fucking exhausted, dude. But a lot of funny shit happened. Only as a storyteller, it's funny. You know what I mean? Now it is. But like, yeah, those are like, I'm so grateful for that day in so many ways. It was so sucked to go through that day, you know?
That you learned about set and setting.
Yeah, like everything, right? Yeah, I learned about set and setting, man. I learned about set and setting that day. Made a commitment. And then it was 10 years before I did it again. So that was a big thing for me. You know, and the next time I did it was in the Netherlands. And it was actually that same Thanksgiving night when my brother and I had like a really big argument on the street. And we ended up taking everybody. Trevor had to fly out that next morning. Derek Anderson, who was my buddy on this film, he was with us. Joe and Brad and I. So the 5 of us like ended up at this hotel by the airport, and they saw us walk in and they were like, put these bozos down and like wing Q. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys are down. There's no one else in that wing of the hotel. I have no idea whatever. And that same night, that was the first time I had done them in 10 years since that time. And it was within that group. We didn't leave a hotel room. And that was the night that ended up with Brad and I just the long hug. Like the long hug, that's just like the one that says everything. Says every piece. There's nodding involved. There's tears involved, there's forgiveness involved, and there's no words shared. And it's really understood. That was a really healing experience, enough for me to be like, I'm ready to come back in with the respect that it deserves. So now that I have a respectful relationship that has just the right amount of trepidation with it, I think my journey has been more meaningful, more purposeful, more intentional. And I think having a community that involves like you, Maura, and you, Daniel, like specifically, has been also just a way to just feel a lot more ease in just being able to bring it into my conversations with other people that aren't people like us, who just, where this is.
The neon plant people sign is not hanging over their heads.
Yeah, like, how do you talk about this with like your aunt? You know what I mean? I have a couple aunts that I could talk to this shit about for real. You know what I mean? Yeah, I probably got a couple aunts where it's like, I'm probably not gonna talk to my aunt about this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just put it in that context, you know?
Yeah, positive stories. Like, when it's brought up, I feel like even your story about how it's like excruciating at times, that word that you use. Like, you know, if somebody only hears that, they're like, what do I want to have anything to do with that? But if they hear the rest of how you got through something, how you made it through, and what you took from that, and learn that, like, okay, I want to like respect this, and I want to go into it in a new way the next time. Yeah, I think it took a while before I heard positive stories that made me not necessarily even want to do it. I'm not even saying that folks hear a positive story and like, oh, this is for me, but just to understand that, like, this is just such a normal thing that we've been doing for so long. Just finding ways to heal ourselves with like what's provided for us, what's already here for us. And in this last like maybe year or so, as it seemed like you're opening yourself to it more and more, it's been really such an honor and joy to be alongside you in so many ways, even though we're far away, but communicating about these things in such a raw way has really been helpful.
Oh, so helpful. So helpful. I remember my phone call with you, Maura, and I remember texting you, Daniel, and being like, because you and I like liked each other from afar because of him, but hadn't really like been like talked on the phone or anything. So and you just part of that too, just being like, yeah, man, oh my gosh, dude, yes, please, you need me, like, Maura would love to talk to you about your intentions and your questions and your experience that you want to have for yourself. You know, and I think that's the most amount of preparation that I had done before a ceremony for myself. And knowing I was going to be by myself again.
Yeah.
You know, 20 years later from my first time.
What was that like?
After I got off the phone with you, the takeaway that I had, which thank you so much. Thank you
my
so,
gosh.
so much for that. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Maura. But thank you for that moment, Maura, where you just like, I found it really helpful to write a letter to the experience, write a letter to the space in which will be curated in the domain that we build like around what happens there. Write a letter to it, like write a letter to the plants. And I meditated for every morning for like 30 days going into it.
Wow.
And I was really in that vibe, just getting into that like space. And I really set my set and setting were really in place for that day. I had brought all kinds of talismans that were all there in front of me to remind me of who I was. A lot of photographs, like photo booth photos that I've had for 20 years that are just like yellowed. All that kind of shit. Rocks, of course, rocks. And photos and rocks, man. You know?
Yeah.
It's so good. Photos and rocks and some quotes and notebooks and art supplies and stuff like that I could just get into. And I had such a glorious, and then I wrote the letter right before I took them. But I had sat with it in my mind and thought about it. And that helped so much. It really helped so much. It really did. It was good. Boil it down to a central question, set and setting. And, you know, I really found it helpful to just write that letter to the space and experience.
I really loved that phone call because we talked a little bit about maybe being on the spectrum. And that was really helpful to me to hear some of your experiences as like another adult that's maybe asking if maybe that
Yes.
applies to you. And I've been thinking about it a lot. I've actually had some conversations with other adults, and part of me is really in this space where I'm like, I don't think there's such a thing as neurotypical, maybe.
Yeah.
And so any kind of label like Asperger's or autism is like inherently built on sort of a false premise.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a really, like, I really appreciate the containers that can help me see my own brain, like you're saying
Yeah.
about ADD. So yeah, it was just really nice to talk to you in that space of both of us being like, what is it like to use this container to look at ourselves and
Yeah.
to hold that really gently. But
Yeah.
that was really nice. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. What would you say for you? Can you look at a certain node, like a pinpoint in the path and the journey for you that feels like good or bad stands out taller than the rest when you look in the rearview mirror? Like one experience that had like a most lasting impact, was there?
I mean, not to be that girl, but it's probably ayahuasca for me. I think that was the beginning of me taking responsibility for my experience of the world, of life. As an adult, like I think
Yeah.
as a kid, like most kids, I was pretty tapped in, and then I went through the
Yeah.
process of being conditioned to this culture. And
Yes.
what was so powerful about that medicine was that it allowed me to see the things about it. It allowed me to see like how I was hurting people, how I hurt people, but it did it in this way that was so compassionate's not even the right word, but it's just all about like lovingly pointing me in the direction of like love and healing and connection for any situation in my life, and just like patting me on the butt and being like, you know what to do, basically. And I think a lot of the depression in my 20s, and we talk about this sometimes, was just sort of this feeling of like, this is it. Like I just didn't have a spiritual bedrock in me. And so for everything to be kind of on this surface level of like personality interfacing games, and I just, it felt like it's not good enough. It's not nourishing enough to, I don't know what to dig into, you know? And I think ayahuasca was the beginning for me of like just this freight train hitting me that was like, magic is real, life is magic, being here is magic, you are magic, you've known that all along, but here you go, here's the reminder, you know. I don't know, I came back from that experience in South America, and like apologized to a bunch of people and like wrote a lot of letters and just had really honest conversations that were uncomfortable that I'd never had before. And yeah, instead of being afraid of that kind of quote unquote work, I realized that that's really the meat of life, you know?
And when you do the work, you're tired. If you're tired at the end of the day, it's because you're doing the work. And if that's what the work is, then it's good to be tired, you know?
Yeah.
I'm tired from working today.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm using all I got.
I'm using it. Yeah. I think it's a good sign. It's a good guidepost too. You're gonna get tired.
Yeah.
On this. It's gonna be.
Yeah.
There will be some exhaustion.
How about you?
Yeah.
Have you had a transformational moment like that?
Yeah, I think fairly recently. It honestly just actually involved like just kind of a moment of like deep prayer. It was a moment of deep prayer, a moment of deep surrender, which was what you're talking about. Is this loving, very loving, nurturing pat on the butt, really look in the mirror, but like look in the mirror from the perspective of like all my grandparents with their hands on my shoulders and the look on their face about the person I've become and how I know they see themselves in me, and I know I see myself in me and them. That kind of a look at myself, and one in which I realized really a profound, simple, basic, constant truth about myself. Real as gravity, real as my hand on my face, you know? And that is just that in order to like just understand that I have potential for this capacity for a great number of relationships, expectation has kept me back from giving myself the allowance and the acceptance to just be myself, which means being fully human, which means just like knowing that like I'm going to walk through this plane and I'm going to hurt and it's going to be all these things. But you know what, Phil? Like you have got people and that love is all around us, and I have it abundance of love in my life. I have abundance of love around me, and that if I'm going to let love out the way that I do very organically, but also sometimes self-obligatorily to make sure that everyone knows that I'm still being constant, that's when I start to get a little bit thin on the inside. I'm like, can I keep this up? This positivity, I can do it. Shit, it feels like I can't do it. You know, in those moments, it's what I need. It's just that hand on the shoulder. And I know I'm that for my friends. I know that that's something that I bring to. I know that I got that glue that my mom gave me.
Yes, you do.
My dad gave me.
Yes.
My grandparents gave me. My family has given me through just like this full on let your freak flag fly. Let's celebrate our farts. Let's laugh loud. Let's tell fucking stories. Let's get into the things of life. Sometimes you gotta laugh to keep from crying, god damn it. And like, let's like walk forward in this. And if I'm gonna do that, I have to let love in. I have to be enough for myself. And be like, love me anyway. And have all the relationships that I surround myself be that basic walking in the door of just like, I love you anyway. And I know you love me anyway. You know, despite and because of, including, and also, additionally, you know, unfortunately, all of them are, I accept. I'm there. And that's when you cease to be friends and you become family. That's what family is. What chosen family is for me. I love you anyway. Let's go. You know what I mean?
I feel like the idea of unconditional love gets thrown around so much, but the actual practice of that is like one of the most challenging things to walk ever.
Yes, it involves a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And it sure as hell involves a lot of forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Releasing expectations.
Yeah. Holding each other to past photographs, past anything, you know.
Telling the truth.
Telling the truth. Yeah, I feel very quickly when someone is seeking to be like a person who's loving unconditionally. You know, you may not always do it, but like you see people that are like really putting that energy out, that like I'm here with you, and I understand that like bumping up against each other sometimes is really hard, and we have these different ideas of how everything should work. But like when everything doesn't work out together, like it's okay. Like work out together in the sense like the way that we have in our mind it should work out. You know, how we get attached to how things should be, that someone else might have a different way of seeing the world, and I'm going to love you anyways.
The laughter helps. Like remembering where you can come to. There's like so many ways, like those things that kind of like are disconnects, or say like incongruencies or remainders that are left over when the space between you has to be merged. These are every relationship. And something that we can always just remember is that like there's multiple bridges in ways to just like as we're shifting, still like slightly shifting, our tectonic plates are rubbing up against each other, and like there's a lot of nuance in there. That nuance is filled with what you both hold as sacred and how much you honor that space in between you as relationships. If it's storytelling, then tell stories, right? If it's just straight up just laughter, like just humor is just this constant thing that you just invest in and build on. And that is an incredible bridge. And, you see this with my youngest kid. It's like, Moose will be just like, he's 5 and he's a Gemini, and he'll just be like the drama face, side of it. And then he will be the happy face side of it faster if I give him the moment that he's in, fully am there with him and witness it with him, and then make a joke. And that's immediately at the end of that vulnerability moment is the moment where it's like, high five. You know what I mean? Come on, Gary. Yeah. All right, Jeff. You know what I mean? He calls me Jeff. I call him Gary. Like, whatever. Like we just call each other random names. And it's just like starts there. And that's our love language. So we're all just going to have that. My mentors, like teachers. So many teachers in this world, right? What shape or form they come in when they arrive, and when what they did with you becomes relevant in your life right then, or when it all of a sudden becomes relevant way later, and you realize how good of a teacher they were.
Yes.
That long arc that goes over your whole life. That's some shit. Those are cool moments. Elders are amazing when when you have elders early on that just show you that they got some shit to share with you,
Yeah.
And then you get to be a parent and you look down and you're like, kids are amazing.
Yeah.
They're like the best teachers of my adulthood are all kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
the kids like are my best teacher every day, my boys. Just how they teach me about themselves, and then they teach me about me by the way that like I just see how our body languages affect each other, how our words affect each other, and see how our trust affects each other, and then traditions that we build, however they're being built, Those are the most amount that my brains and neurons are firing are in like that camp. And that also is exhausting. But you're going to get tired. You're going to get weary. The storms will be overhead.
Laughter can be exhausting. Laughter is good medicine for sure. Silence is good medicine. And I feel like I'm learning that more and more with holding space with friends, where we don't have to fill every moment with talking or the energy of like projecting anything other than I'm just here right now. And I know you're going to be okay. That's taken me a long way. And Maura and I still have check-ins about that, because I can just riff and riff and riff. I can get like all over the place and not see sometimes that just in the silence, like that's enough. Just being here in this moment, like we're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. If we don't talk about every little thing that's happening around us, or get distracted by regaling this or that, it's like, oh, we're just enjoying what's happening all around us and trusting that one another is fine. One another has got this. And if we need one another, we'll extend in some way. But yeah, I'm saying this right now because I really need to hear myself say this, because I really struggle with it. I struggle with like that silence being good medicine. And I think Maura has taught me so much about that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because from seeing it in her world and trusting that she is fine.
Yeah, saw it this morning.
She's just fine, and I'm fine too. Yeah.
Silence of a book to start the day. You start your day with a book. I'm getting it all wrong. I mean, like, ending my day. I end my day with a book.
Whatever floats your boat.
But it always involves the same cycle of falling asleep at some point on some page that I think was this page or that page, and then I have to read that page, and then I fall asleep maybe a third of the paragraph later than I did the night before, and then I reread the whole pages. That's a weird cycle to be in, because then a book takes for fucking ever, dude. So start your day with a book, says Maura.
I enjoy it. It puts me into that like childhood place of like time does not exist kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate people like y'all that are very like social loving people person, because I think sometimes I think that that's going to cost me something. And then when I'm around y'all, because y'all are just so easy and accepting and non-judgmental and loving, it's taught me a lot about the pleasure of like communing in a way that I used to like kind of be like, oh God, don't be too much, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel very emotional about it in this moment, because it really has been a big gift to learn that I love people, you know?
This is awesome.
And that you want to be around them.
Yeah. And for me to also learn that journey of like learning to love silence, for sure. Same with you. Just that's a journey for me, you know, because of course I love socialization. Good God, it's just like it's my communion every day. Like I
music,
love
sound,
sacrament,
like
all of it. Commune every day in a big way, you know. And so I need it. That's so vitally important for me to understand that piece too. But it's good to hear like that, like, you know, that when you speak of your experience and your gratitude for that moment, it's like, it's good for me to see from the other perspective too, of just like your experience of sometimes being like, sometimes things are too much and it's going to cost you to go into like a social interaction. And I know that my costs are a lot more like, what gets into repeat? What do I start repeating myself? If I have to interface with a lot of people, like after a show, what part of me has to be reserved to just like be sort of like exist within that like realm every night for like this certain amount of time, and know these rhythms of like, it's kind of like a barrier that I have to put out there on some level, shape, or form, because there's just going to be an abundance even more than normal. But if people that I can't control that I'm meeting, I can't control who I'm meeting after a show. I just putting myself in the space to like accept just a ton of new energy and a ton of new experiences, and then kind of meet them with anything within this realm that's like a soccer goal of just like a lot of information is in there, but like it's going to hit a net. The ball that whatever ball they kick at it is going to hit a net, and I'll be able to field it and it'll be okay. You know, so it's a reserve. So that's what it costs me, I think, in that sense. And I think the other thing that costs me sometimes is just understanding that, like, when I think of controlling or control, and how all of us have what our controls are. What's my control? My control. That's like a control for me. It's the positivity is a control. I realize in some ways, because like, say for instance, last night we all did a sauna, and there was new people involved, and then the sisters came in right there.
Folks that we didn't know.
Folks that we did not know.
Before that moment.
Yes, before that moment. And my first inclination is just to balance the energy of the room and just feel like, okay, they walked into some, you know, just like whatever they were expecting, whatever expectations that they were. Obviously, they couldn't expect all of the things that they kind of had to embrace within a short span, right? they had to kind of just get on the same page, and probably
A
had
room
a
of
big
naked
inner,
hippies.
big inner journey real quick when they came in. They're like, okay.
And I'm doing that too in that moment.
But in
I'm
that
having my
moment-
own inner journey about
Yeah.
new folks coming in and what that means for this
That
moment
means,
for me.
like, oh,
too.
this is changing. And my first instinct as a Libra and as Phil is to balance the situation if I can. That's a control. And then it's like, I want to control the situation in a sense that I want them to feel like they're on the same page as we are, and get them to a place where it feels like we're like, because like the diverging energies that happen in a room, like I can tell, like push and pull at me in my body in a way that like maybe it's a control for myself to get balanced, but in order to do that, like I need to make sure that these people feel like they're okay, and like they are seen, or like
Harmonizing.
also harmonizing. Like, how do we harmonize? Here's these two sisters. How do we harmonize them to the room? Like, how can there be harmony? Thank you so much. This is exactly where we're going to go now. But I think that's like where I spend a lot of energy of mine in those. That's kind of like,
Yeah.
in that kind of situation a lot.
Because you're like extending your emotional octopus
Yeah.
fingers to everybody in the room.
To everyone in the room.
Yeah.
And I realize sometimes it involves a lot of like, I'll really hold court sometimes. I'll go there. I have no shortage of things to say. I have no shortage of stories. I have no shortage of jokes. There's no shortage, because it's just a constant canyon in my brain of so many divergent things at once, I let it all out, and I realize like in the moments when I'm really silent and I actually slow down and I actually am there long enough to get solace, I'm like, oh Jesus, Phil, why don't you need to do this so much more often than you do. You really do. You really do. And so that's a journey forward for me.
That was actually, I was thinking that might be a nice way to kind of wrap up. Is I'd love to hear, what you're working on going forward, like where you're growing and what seeds you're nourishing right now.
Gratitude. Growing a relationship with God. God is love. That is currency. Currency is energy. Yeah, energy is like intention. And so we all can be a role in the story of something that's greater than us, right? Because it lives in each of us as we go. So trusting that path moving forward involves spending intentional time, whatever unguaranteed time I have on this earth, we all have on this earth. What I'm going to use in that time is what's valuable to me. Is people, family, chosen and given, and music. Those are the realm. That's my work. That's where I'm going to lean. And accepting and letting love in is huge. And that means a lot of like forgiveness and letting go of just expectations, constantly understanding how many I don't even know that I'm putting on myself so many times, but just trusting my body to move forward and lead the way. And that I put my body last for my first half of my life. And if I live another 40 years, God willing, I want to let my body lead first, because I think that it's a lot wiser than I've ever given it credit for, And now I'm just like, oh, you've been here all along, attached to the bottom of my neck, sending me signals day after day, moment after moment, urging me forward in many ways, teaching you. How about you, Maura?
I think focus has been a big word for me recently. Focus is where I feel that feels the best for my nervous system, is when I'm totally devoting all the parts of myself to one thing, and catching myself quicker when I notice that I'm allowing myself to distract or multitask, which are all like helpful skills, survival skills, I think, but really trying to honor, like you're saying, using whatever time I have here in a very intentional way. And that includes my like psychic energy. Whether that's a project that I'm manifesting or being present in a relationship with people that are in front of me. But yeah, just not splitting, not dividing that channel of connection up. Yeah. How about you?
It's so beautiful out here, y'all. I just wanted to take a moment just to look up the side of this hill and see the light, passing through some of these like neon green, like spring green leaves that have newly arrived, and all these flowers, and just sitting around this fire with y'all. It's just hearing the water flow. Yeah, just magical, really magical, and so grateful. So gratitude, yeah.
Gratitude.
Yeah, a lot of gratitude to be able to be in spaces like this, and to find myself in spaces more like this intentionally, to have the phone off and away from me, and really like just kind of turn off the machines, reconnect with my heart, like you were saying, Phil, just like that heart space that has always been there, that I'm realizing that I've been tapping into actually my whole life, but maybe not listening to it fully.
Yeah, as another friend of mine, Mavis, said, I prefer what occurs.
Oh, that's so good.
Thank you, Mavis.
Thank you, Mavis. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love y'all.
Love you.
I'm so glad to get a little time hanging out with y'all today. I don't know how often I'm going to be putting out new Unbroken Chain episodes, but I will say that Daniel and I are putting out our feature documentary later this month, July, and it actually includes a lot of Phil's music. So we're going to put out some things around that and a lot more film work to come. So if you want to find more Unbroken Chain, maurajames.com. And if you want to find more Phil Cook, spiritualhelpline.com and philcookmusic.com. He's got a lot more coming out. He's so freaking prolific, and I know I'm really sweet on the direction that he's going to uplift the voices in his community and make music on his own terms. So stay tuned. I love you. More to come.